Welcome, dear friends, to Cardiac Radio at 11 p.m., nourishing our souls with the laws of love. This book that changes our understanding about ourselves, about our relationships, about life, about circumstances and events. You and I have the single opportunity of re educating our minds. Kardec, in the Spirit's book, explains to us in the law of work, in one of his comments to one of the questions and answers, he says that we need a moral education, one in which we acquire new moral habits. That's why you and I are reincarnated. In this book, Laws of Love, Emmanuel discloses to us an educational understanding on suffering. And we come to know that suffering is no punishment, that it's a way of understanding our lives and ourselves, and that everything shall pass. Everything shall pass, even kidney stones, right? They pass, they go. So, how are we going to go through this? Have we learned the lessons? If we haven't learned, they're going to come back. They're going to be repeated. And we don't want that, right? It's like a student. Some people think, oh, I'm suffering a lot. Next life, I won't suffer. Well, it depends. In the Gospel according to Spiritism, in chapter 5, it talks about suffering well or not, or badly. When we understand, when we surrender to God's designs. Do you remember in the book Paul and Stephen by Emmanuel through Chico Xavier, a phenomenal book? In that book, Emmanuel shows in chapter 10 of the first part that Paul of Tarsus at some point encounters Jesus in the pathway to Damascus. Let us not forget that Jesus does not invade his privacy. On the contrary, inside, through the pathway, Emmanuel shows to us that there was an openness in his thoughts. Saul of Tarsus was conflicted, and conflicts in our lives are true opportunities. We agree. You and I agree. I don't want to be conflicted, but that's the status of many of us on earth. But it's a status of advancement because there are many people who are not conflicted. Why? Either because they are super well resolved, which is rare, very rare on earth, or because they are so dormant that they do not see that there is another way of living. When we start having conflict, it's a sign that we are progressing. It's a sign that we know that there is a better choice, but we're still conditioned to that same old response. So, Saul of Tarsus at some point, when Jesus reveals himself saying, when he asks, who are you? And he answers, first, Jesus comes, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? And next, Saul answers by questioning, who are you? And then Jesus says, I'm Jesus. I'm Lord Jesus. Immediately thereafter, Emmanuel explains to us what was going on in Saul of Tarsus' mind. He was recalling his whole life, his teachings, the teachings of the scriptures, his life. He was conflicted. And then Jesus comes by saying, Saul, do not kick the goats. What does he mean? Do not resist. Surrender. Today, you and I are being invited to a new journey to redefine our relationships in our family. In chapter 2 of the book Laws of Love, we're studying about why we reincarnate, the unfinished business that needs to be seen, right? We have studied that death does not end our conflicts, our unfinished businesses we're going to carry to another life. We need to redress things that were not addressed. That's why Jesus says, reconcile today, or else we're going to have to meet again. And you think we're going to meet only in the spiritual realm? No, we're going to meet in another incarnation. And then we're just postponing unnecessarily. So, why we're saying this? Because today we're studying a few questions that are unbelievable. First, Emmanuel was asked, what is the connection between blood ties and destiny? And the answer is, in the connections of blood ties, we revisit our relationships with all those who are associated with us, with our destiny, through the pathways of good, of the good or of evil, through the blessed doors of reincarnation. So when we reincarnate, in our families, we're going to find people that we get along and people that we don't get along, so we're just meeting again. When people say, oh, but I have no single person in my whole family who I get along, it's impossible. There must be at least one relative. Sometimes it's not the immediate family, but there must be at least one. Because God is good. He does not send us to a new reincarnation without the providence of love. But then you ask, who were in previous lives those parents who were very authoritarian? Who were they? You know, despotic parents? Who were they for us? You think it's by chance? Because usually we feel like selves, like victims. That's the worst feeling we can have. We need to teach our children. You are responsible for what you are attracting. Learn the lesson and emit a different thought and feeling to attract something different. But understand that when we attract parents who are despotic, who are authoritarians, Emmanuel explains that almost always those despotic, authoritarian parents of today were children of ours in the past, into which we have implemented selfishness and intolerance. Are you surprised? If we're living that life, that's the reason why. So despotic parents were our children in the past, maybe a far past, but it was a past, maybe not immediate, but somewhere along the line in the past we have sowed selfishness and intolerance, because the people who are despotic, they're proud of ourselves. They think that they know better. How many parents abuse their authority? Pride and selfishness. Intolerance is a great deal about pride. When we think that we cannot understand, put up with people's ways of being, and when we say put up with that, doesn't mean really putting up with that, it means understanding. It's the concept of tolerance that Emmanuel brings to us in the book Thought in Life. So, for us, right now, it's food for thought. So, it's the law of action and reaction. You and I are being invited tonight to understand that everything we sow today is going to be reaped tomorrow. So, if we go revisit our previous lives, there was lives way back when, maybe not recently, in which we encountered those friends, we treated them that way, we taught them that way, and now we're ready to bring them back to our relationship and re-educate ourselves together. So, and what about the rebellious child? When we have a rebellious child, who is that rebellious child? That rebellious child is addicted and rebellious, as Emmanuel, is the brother or sister that one day we push them to intemperance and crimes delinquency. You know the story. Every time we make a decision, we're never alone, for the good or for evil. We're always accompanied by someone. And then we're going to be co-responsible for it. The law of action and reaction is so important that it's one of the most fundamental things we should teach our children. From the get-go, you do something and you do this very concretely. You do something and there is a response. You can even do experiments. For those who have little kids, you can go to the Dad Lab on Facebook or YouTube, and he has wonderful experiments that can teach us about law of action and reaction, physically speaking. Nothing spiritually, we're talking about physics. But children learn in a concrete way. We show it to them and say, this is life. Today, I'm going to do this. Tomorrow, I'm going to receive it. So the child today that is rebellious and addicted is somebody whom we taught to be that way. What about the daughter who is inconsequential? She was someone whom we pushed to imbalance and cruelty. We see so many parents nowadays investing on vanity, as if vanity is a good thing. In the long run, what we teach our children is going to come back to us. If we go to the book 2,000 years ago, Emmanuel, through Chico Xavier, shows to us the case of Fulvia, the mother, who is very thoughtless. She's cruel, and she induces her daughter Aurelia to be just alike. But guess what? That daughter became even worse. She killed her mother at the end. You can read the book to see why. As if there is a justification. But who taught her that? So in another life, coming back, well, to repeat the failed mission of motherhood. What about the husband that is cheating on the wife? That's a question that was asked to Emmanuel. So the husband that is always cheating on the wife or the spouse is the ungrateful and unloyal husband in many circumstances is the same husband of the past that we left because we were also engaged in unhappy decisions. Isn't that surprising? It is very surprising. No wonder we're going to see many couples easily deserting the relationships. And then they have to come back to understand the sacredness of the togetherness that they have committed. It's a two-way road. What about the wife that is thoughtless, clueless? The clueless wife. You know what he means, right? And then the answer is the clueless wife that brings so much sorrows to our feelings is the woman that we despised another time, and that triggered in her some form of mental illness. And now that wife that is not truly balanced is someone whom we need to bring back to our care so we can help her readjust. Everything we're talking about is pretty much unconscious because God is so good that makes us forget the past. And what about now? We're going to wrap up with the most beautiful question of the sequence. What about those relatives that are truly abnegated? The abnegated relatives. You know what abnegated is? Those who are selfless, caring. The relatives that are now selfless, that become a shoulder where we lean on, are friends of other times, with which we have constructed solid foundations of friendship and understanding, providing us a way for reciprocal safety. Isn't this beautiful? It's not only about difficult relatives, family members, blood ties. It's about recognition, the realization that many of the good relationships in our families are byproduct of conquests in the past. We understood each other, we supported each other, we were true friends to one another, and God is so wise that always brings to us at least one relative, at least one that truly loves us, truly cares about us. Just like in the book Reincarnation in Life, not in English yet. In Spanish, it's Hechos que Prueban. In Portuguese, Reencarnação e Vida. Our dear Amália Domingo Soler, a wonderful medium in Spain in the 20th century, she brought to us cases of reincarnation, and you may watch 15 of these cases at Kardec Radio 3 years ago. Facebook page, YouTube page, SoundCloud, 15 cases of previous lives. And one of the cases is this case of the mother of the grandfather who loves his niece. Who loves his grandchild, the granddaughter. And he doesn't understand why he cares for someone who need so much special care. In previous lives, they had a relationship. So now, without the sexual component, because that's not what she means, the spirit of the grandfather really committed to helping educate that soul of a criminal that he loved very much in a previous life. So we come back to support each other. Bottom line today for you and I. Yes, we can look at our relationships with the understanding that Emmanuel is bringing to us and say, well, now I understand. And now I understand what I need to do. That's why Emmanuel says to us in a question and answer that comes, what do we need to win in our domestic struggles? The conclusion is his answer. We must be patient, love, understand, devote ourselves, take heart, have hope and humility in order to learn and to win in our domestic struggle. In the world, the home is the first school for our rehabilitation and our readjustment. So now we look at our difficult family members, relatives, and we understand why, but we understand mostly what to do. Patiently, knowing we're no victims, and always find those who are there to help us, because we already have connections as support system to achieve the goal. What are we going to do in the next 24 hours? You may be asking. If we don't do an exercise, it's just going to be simple knowledge. Not so simple. It's a revelation. What Emmanuel is giving to us is a true revelation. But you and I are being called today to rid ourselves of this victimization feeling. You know, when we feel like, oh, nobody understands me. I'm the bad sheep in my family. Da-da-dee, da-da-da. No. Write it down. Victimization. Take that card. Tear it apart and say, no, I am no longer a victim. I take full charge of my life. And I decide to love and only love. I take full responsibility of my life and I decide to love. Bye-bye victimization. Hello empowerment. This is the lesson for today, dear friends, according to Emmanuel. Thanks to the medium Chico, Xavier, and Waldo Vieira. We thank you for being here with us today. Let us meditate, do this exercise, and live happier. Thank you, friends. See you tomorrow, God willing.